Good morning. Welcome to Corona Walk 6. Where are we? Yes, around me you see trees. I'm in a tiny little clearing, and this is perhaps symbolic of where we are. Governments everywhere are looking at deregulating our social and biological distancing. Are we out in the open, or are we just simply in a clearing? Are we fooling ourselves? Have we gone through all this for nothing? Or have we now reduced the prevalence of the virus in the population to the extent that it is actually now safe to go out? It's very hard to answer those questions because the data that we have is not conclusive. There's not enough tests been done to actually work out how much of this virus really is out there in the population. All we know is the people who've died, who we know have died from corona, and the people who've died that are described as excess deaths, i.e. more people dying than would normally die. Every one of us is fed up with what we've had to go through in the last few months. I want to go swimming. I want to go to the gym. I want to go to a guest house, a pub, have a drink. I want to sit around with friends and have a drink and tell jokes. Why not? It's been a long time. But is it safe? Is it really safe to do these things? Today in Bavaria, they're opening the gardens of the guest houses. Next Monday, they're going to open the restaurants. There are some distancing measures that are being put in place. There will need to be at least 2 meters between each table where people are sitting. They're also allowing gatherings here of a few people from the same family, whereas before it was only the same household. But is it really safe? If I put the BBC Parliament channel on, I see social distancing going on. A Prime Minister surrounded by empty leather benches. Answering questions from the Leader of the Opposition surrounded by empty leather benches. They don't think it's safe. Or at least they haven't decided to change their practices. What about our school kids? I'm sure many parents who have children of school age would love to send them back to school. Is it safe for the kids? Is it safe for the teachers? And will the kids catch something off each other and bring it back home and infect people who are more at risk? And we have this other virus that's now flying around, which seems to be affecting small children. And it's related to COVID-19, and the effects of it are quite severe and quite unpleasant. Fortunately, it still seems to be quite rare. What about private schools? We hear the schools that the Prime Minister went to and many of his cabinet are staying shut until September. Why is that? Can't they go back to school as well? I heard some very interesting research at the weekend from a professor in Bristol. This professor has been looking at the effects of COVID-19, and she came up with some very interesting results. Mainly that the sickness you get from COVID-19 is almost related to the amount of COVID-19 that infects you. So if you get a little bit of COVID-19, you may not get symptoms at all. If you get quite a bit, you'll get quite ill. And if you have a lot, it could kill you. And this, to some extent, explains why people, for example, who haven't had PPE, who've had to work in nursing homes, who've had to work in hospitals, have been dying in quite large numbers because they've been exposed to very high doses of COVID-19. If this research is correct, then this is very interesting because this may be a way forward to a vaccine Maybe the vaccine is to have a very, very small amount of COVID-19. Maybe some of us have already had that very small dose and are now immune. I could be one of those people. I don't know. I've never had a test. I've not been ill, so I haven't needed to have a test. I just want to say a little bit about operational issues. I've spent 30 odd years working with people who have to manage crises. Obviously nothing on the scale of what we're experiencing now, where this is not just population-wide, this is the entire planet. It's probably the biggest crisis since the Second World War. We're 7 months into this crisis. Are the team that we have responsible for managing this crisis fit for purpose? This is a question that every organisation that has to manage a crisis needs to ask itself. Have I got the right people around the table? And one way to do this is to actually look at the skills that they have. We know that a good team would have leaders who are capable of making decisions, but also very good listeners. We know that we need people who can research, find things out. We know we need people who generate ideas, and we know we need people who can finish things off, make sure things happen. Do we have a team like this? What do we know about the team that are actually managing this crisis? We know that a number of them have been infected by the virus itself, including the Prime Minister, who we're led to believe was extremely ill. Do we trust this team? Do we, as a country, believe that they have our best interests at heart? I very much hope so. And one part of this, although I don't agree with Brexit, they badly want to do the Brexit, so perhaps they do have our interests at heart, because if they don't solve this, then their Brexit isn't going to happen. How were they trained? Have they ever been trained? For most commercial organisations and large organisations and public organisations, you would run lots of training exercises, you would have crisis management teams, you would try out various people in different roles and see how they act and respond. Has this happened with our crisis management team? I suspect not. We do know that there was a massive exercise conducted 4 years ago, Exercise Cygnus. And in this exercise, virtually every problem that we're having now with this pandemic came up as an issue. Another question that comes to my mind, most organisations who would practice for a crisis would have an alternative site. Assuming the government of this country runs the country, do we not have an alternative place where MPs could sit, where they could all get in, where they could all maintain social distancing? Is Westminster fit for purpose? At least for this crisis, it would appear not. They're limited to 100 people out of 650 odd. Everybody else has to come on a TV screen, or like the way I'm talking to you now. These are issues that could be and should have been thought about when they ran exercises in the past. How many of the recommendations from Exercise Cygnus were taken up? Almost none. It's pushed to one side and forgotten about. Finally, I just want to leave you with one other point. Something that we teach people who manage crises. Keep a log. We need a log of every decision that's been made, every communication that's been made, everything that we can capture, we should capture. Now, this is normally good practice if you're a commercial organisation, because we want to make sure that we have evidence to show the insurers that we did everything we could to minimise our exposure. In this case, it's not the insurers who will want to see this. It'll be some future public inquiry. How did our government measure up to the demands of COVID-19? Did they take on board the recommendations of their own exercise in 2016? I'll say goodbye at this point, but you'll be seeing me again in the very near future. Thank you very much for listening. See you in a day or two. Bye-bye.